With Father George Salzman of the Harvard Catholic Center. We're here at St. Paul's Parish in Harvard Square. I don't know if you can see, we're at the corner of Bow and Arrow Streets, if you can see the street signs across the street. But we're across the street from St. Paul's at Adams House. And we're in front of the most interesting of the five buildings, perhaps the loveliest dorm at Harvard, Westmoreland Court. It was designed by a lawyer who lost his hearing and therefore became an architect. His name Charles Wetmore. He designed Grand Central Station and the Biltmore Hotel in Manhattan, and he also designed Westmoreland Court. And because we're thinking these days so much about epidemics and vaccines, we're thinking of noticing its most famous occupant, Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt came here as a student in 1900. He got done in 3 years, 1903. But then he was elected president of the Crimson and decided to exercise that. So to keep standing, he did a master's degree in history here at Harvard. And then if we fast forward a ways, he ended up as Assistant Secretary of the Navy. And when the Spanish flu hit Europe, he was doing inspections over there and was felled by that, was brought back on a ship on a stretcher, survived. And then in 1920, he was the vice presidential candidate for one of the major parties, the Democratic, in that election. Walked all over the country, very athletic guy. You see pictures of him walking everywhere. But the next year, 1921, he was felled by an epidemic then, which was very common, polio, and he never walked again. But then, if we fast forward to 1932, he was elected president of the United States. And in 1933 inaugurated, and right before his inauguration, there was a birthday party for him at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. They were very generous gifts, so he took them all and he gave them to what were called the polios, the poor kids with polio, for their medical bills. And that became a collection called the March of Dimes, which was enlarged not only to pay medical bills, but also to find a cure. And a cure was never found, but they found what we search for very much ourselves right now, and that's to say a vaccine. They actually came up with two. But the first of them, the Salk vaccine, was such a great discovery. It was announced on the 10th anniversary of his death. We just had the 75th of it on Easter, April 12th. So April 12th, 1955, 10 years later, they opened the envelope and announced that the Salk vaccine was successful against polio. Up to that time, kids weren't allowed to go out in the summer, weren't allowed to go to swimming pools and so on because of it. Everyone was afraid of it, that they would lose their walk as he had. And this was an immense triumph. Church bells around the country rang. President Eisenhower broke down on television with joy at the good news of the polio vaccine. We're here at a time of epidemic, and we are very concerned for those sick with C-19 and concerned with the doctors and nurses and EMTs and everyone else who care for them, concerned for the people who are in essential services and for those who've lost their work for the moment. So let us pray for all those causes, but above all, the search for the vaccine, let us pray for that the success which they knew